The scent of old money and new perfume hung heavy in the air at Aurelia, a restaurant where the cutlery cost more than most people's weekly groceries. James Alistair felt distinctly out of place, but he didn't care. His world, all that mattered of it, was sitting across the small linen-draped table from him, a plastic tiara perched slightly askew on her head of tangled brown hair. "Daddy, can I have the chocolate lava cake? With 2 scoops of ice cream?" Lily asked, her 6-year-old eyes wide with the gravity of the request. James smiled, a warm, genuine expression that softened the tired lines around his own eyes. "It's your birthday, Princess. You can have the whole volcano if you want." He was wearing his usual attire, a pair of well-worn jeans and a faded grey polo shirt that had seen better days. He hadn't had time to change after closing up his small woodworking shop for the day, a place that smelled of sawdust and varnish, a world away from Aurelia's symphony of truffle oil and seared scallops. This dinner was a splurge, a promise he'd made to his daughter, and he'd move mountains to keep it. Their quiet celebration was a small island in a sea of noise. A few tables away, a woman with a voice as sharp as her cheekbones was holding court. This was Isabella Vance. Her dress was a sheath of crimson silk that probably had a name and a waiting list. Her diamonds caught the light with every dismissive flick of her wrist. Her son, a boy of about 7 named Julian, was mirroring her arrogance, stabbing at his escargots with a silver fork as if they'd personally offended him. "Julian, darling, don't play with your food," Isabella chided, though her tone held no real warmth. "It's uncivilized." Lily, oblivious, was humming a happy birthday tune to herself. She slid off her chair, her small hand clutching a glass of apple juice, and began to wobble her way toward the grand dessert display near the entrance. "I want to see the cakes, Daddy," she whispered, her eyes fixed on the multi-layered confections under the glass dome. James started to rise. "Stay close, sweetie." But it happened in a flash. Julian, bored with his snails, suddenly kicked his chair back, intending to stand. The leg of his chair caught Lily's small foot. She stumbled, a tiny gasp escaping her lips, and the glass of apple juice flew from her hand. It didn't hit the floor. Instead, it arced through the air in a perfect, horrifying trajectory, landing squarely on the pristine white leather of Isabella Vance's handbag. A handbag that James, even with his limited knowledge of high fashion, recognized as a Birkin. The silence that followed was instantaneous and absolute. Every conversation in the restaurant died. Every eye turned to the small girl frozen in place, a dark, sticky stain spreading across a canvas of impossibly expensive leather. Isabella Vance looked down at her bag. She didn't scream. Her reaction was far worse. She let out a soft, venomous hiss, her painted red lips curling into a sneer. She slowly raised her eyes, not to Lily but to James, who was already rushing to his daughter's side. "Are you her keeper?" Isabella asked, her voice dripping with disdain. She looked James up and down, her gaze lingering on his worn jeans and the faint smudge of wood stain on his forearm. Her assessment was swift and brutal. "I'm her father," James said, his voice low and steady as he knelt and wrapped an arm around a trembling Lily. "It was an accident. I am incredibly sorry. Of course, I'll pay for the cleaning." Isabella laughed, a short, ugly sound that had no humor in it. "Cleaning? Darling, you couldn't afford the tissue paper this bag was wrapped in." She gestured vaguely at him with a perfectly manicured hand. "Look at you. Did you get lost on your way to a construction site? This is Aurelia, not a soup kitchen." The other patrons began to murmur, some with sympathy, most with the cruel curiosity of spectators at a public shaming. The restaurant manager, a man named Philip, scurried over, his face pale. "Mrs. Vance, is everything all right?" "No, Philip. Everything is not all right," she snapped, finally turning her venom on Lily, who had buried her face in her father's chest. "This child has just ruined a $30,000 handbag, and her father," she said the word like it was a piece of filth, "thinks he can just wipe it clean." "I am truly sorry," James repeated, his jaw tight. He could feel the hot burn of anger rising in his chest, but he pushed it down. For Lily. Always for Lily. "It was an accident. She's just a child." "An undisciplined one, clearly," Isabella retorted. "Children like that grow up to be drains on society. Just like their parents. She turned to the manager. "I want them out, now. People like this, with their cheap clothes and their sticky children, ruin the atmosphere. They don't belong here." The manager looked helplessly at James, his expression a mixture of pity and professional obligation. "Sir, perhaps—" James didn't let him finish. He stood up, lifting Lily into his arms. He held her tight, shielding her from the glares and whispers. His own gaze was locked on Isabella Vance. For a single, fleeting moment, the tired, gentle woodworker vanished, and something else looked out from his eyes, something cold, ancient, and absolutely terrifying. It was a look of such profound, calculating stillness that Isabella, for the first time, felt a flicker of unease. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. He simply nodded. "We were just leaving." He walked toward the exit, his back straight, Lily's quiet sobs muffled against his shoulder. As he passed the table, he paused and looked down at the ruined handbag. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn leather wallet. From it, he extracted 2 crumpled $20 bills and placed them on the table next to the bag. "For your trouble," he said, his voice devoid of all emotion. Isabella scoffed, a look of utter disbelief on her face. $40? Is that a joke?" James didn't answer. He just walked out of the restaurant, leaving the $40, the ruined bag, and the suffocating judgment of the room behind him. As the heavy glass door swung shut, he heard Isabella's parting shot, loud enough for the entire restaurant to hear. "Tell your daughter to remember this. Some people are born to serve, and some are born to be served. She should learn her place early." Outside in the cool night air, James held his daughter and let her cry. But inside his own mind, a switch had been flipped. A door to a past he had locked and sealed shut years ago had just been blown off its hinges. The quiet woodworker was gone, and the man who had taken his place had just heard a declaration of war. The drive home was silent, save for the occasional hitching sob from the back seat where Lily had cried herself to sleep, her plastic tiara now cracked. James watched her in the rearview mirror, his knuckles white on the steering wheel of his beat-up Ford pickup. Each of her tears felt like a drop of acid on his soul. He had built a fortress of love and simplicity around her since his wife Elena had passed away. He had given up a world of power and influence, a world of shadows and numbers, to give his daughter a normal, happy life, one where she would never know the man he used to be. Isabella Vance had breached that fortress. She hadn't just insulted him, she had branded his daughter with shame. She had tried to teach Lily her place in the world, and James Alistair, or rather the man he truly was, had a very different lesson in mind for the Vance family. He pulled into the driveway of his modest suburban home, a far cry from the glass and steel penthouses of his past. He carried a sleeping Lily inside, tucked her into bed, and gently placed a kiss on her forehead. He lingered for a moment, memorizing the peaceful innocence of her face, fueling the cold fire that now burned in his gut. Then he walked down to his basement. To anyone else, it was just a basement. Concrete floors, a water heater, some old furniture under a dusty tarp. But James walked to the far wall, a section of plain, unadorned drywall. He pressed his palm against a specific spot, a place with no visible seams or buttons. There was a soft, pneumatic hiss, and a section of the wall, 10 feet wide, slid silently sideways, revealing not a hidden safe, but an entire room. The air inside was cool and sterile, a stark contrast to the rest of the house. It was an office, a command center, bathed in the soft blue glow of dormant monitors. A sleek, minimalist desk sat before a wall of screens, each one dark. This was the tomb of his former life, the sarcophagus of a man known in the highest echelons of global finance only by a whisper, a legend, Midas. They called him that because everything he touched turned to gold. For him, for his targets, it turned to ash. He sat down in the ergonomic chair, the leather sighing under his weight. He hadn't sat here in 6 years, not since the day Lily was born. He had walked away from it all for her, for Elena. But the world had a way of pulling you back. He pressed a single button on the console. The screens flickered to life, one by one, displaying a cascade of real-time data. Stock tickers, encrypted communication channels, global market heat maps. Systems he had personally designed, light years ahead of anything commercially available, booted up in seconds. He picked up a secure satellite phone, a device that had never been touched by a public network. He dialed a number from memory, a number that connected to only one other person in the world. It rang once. "It's been a long time," a calm, familiar voice said, without any preamble. "Marcus," James said, his own voice different now, stripped of the gentle warmth he reserved for Lily. It was flat, hard, precise. "Are you still with me?" There was a pause, but not of hesitation. It was a pause of weight, of understanding. Marcus Thorne had been his right hand, his strategist, the only man who knew the full extent of the Midas Empire. He had been faithfully managing the dormant assets, making quiet, conservative investments, honoring James's wish for a silent retirement. "To the ends of the earth, James. You know that," Marcus replied. "What's happened?" James stared at a blank screen, but in his mind he saw Isabella Vance's sneering face. "I was disrespected. That I can forgive. My daughter was hurt. That I cannot." He took a slow breath. "I need a full workup. Family name is Vance. Primary holding is Vance Consolidated. I want to know everything, their assets, their liabilities, their secrets, their fears. I want to know where they are over-leveraged, where they are exposed. I want the schematics to their financial house." Marcus was silent for a moment. He knew what this meant. The sleeping giant was awake. "Vance Consolidated," Marcus said, the sound of typing already audible in the background. "Harrison Vance is the patriarch. Old money, real estate and tech sectors. His daughter, Isabella Vance, is the public face, the company's CMO. They're considered a blue chip, stable as a mountain." "Every mountain has a fracture line, Marcus," James said, his eyes scanning the nascent data streams already populating his screens. "I want you to find it, and I want to be ready to detonate the charge." "How deep do you want to go?" Marcus asked, his voice now all business. "Deep?" James leaned forward, the glow of the monitors reflecting in his cold, determined eyes. "Marcus, by the time I'm done, the Vance family will be a footnote in a bankruptcy filing. I'm not just going to take their money, I'm going to take their name. I'm going to erase them." "Consider it done," Marcus said. "Welcome back, Midas." James hung up. He swiveled his chair to face the largest central monitor and began to type. Code and commands flowed from his fingertips with an old, familiar fluency. He was no longer James Alistair, the quiet woodworker. He was a force of nature, a ghost in the machine, and he had just aimed the full, terrifying weight of his hidden empire at one unsuspecting family. The Vances thought they were untouchable, secure in their billion-dollar fortress. They had no idea that the architect of their ruin was sitting in a suburban basement, plotting their complete and utter annihilation. For the next 72 hours, James Alistair lived a dual life with schizophrenic precision. By day, he was daddy. He made Lily pancakes with chocolate chip smiles, took her to the park, and helped her glue glitter onto a new handmade birthday card for her imaginary friend, Sir Reginald the Bear. He listened to her stories, braided her hair, and reassured her with gentle hugs that the mean lady at the restaurant was gone and couldn't hurt her. He maintained the sanctuary. But when Lily was asleep, he would descend into the basement and Midas would emerge. The room, which he called the labyrinth, was his true element. With Marcus as his remote eyes and ears, they worked with a synergy forged over a decade of hostile takeovers and corporate raids that were the stuff of Wall Street legend. "They're arrogant," Marcus reported on the second night, his voice crisp over the encrypted line. "Vance Consolidated's foundations are solid, but their recent expansion is built on debt. Harrison Vance has leveraged a significant portion of the company against a single massive government contract. The Helios project," James read from his screen, where a mountain of proprietary data was now neatly organized by his custom AI. "A next-generation satellite communications network for the Department of Defense. It's their golden goose." "It's their everything," Marcus corrected. "The bid is sealed. The announcement is in 2 weeks. They are the sole preferred bidder. Wall Street has already priced the win into their stock. If they lose it, the debt covenants trigger. It would be a catastrophic cascade failure." James stared at the data points, his mind connecting them like constellations. He saw the web of loans, the political connections, the technical specifications. They're the preferred bidder, but the contract isn't signed. Who's the runner-up? A smaller, more innovative tech firm, OmniLink Technologies, Marcus replied. Technically superior proposal, but they lack the political clout of the Vances. The Pentagon Committee favored Vance's proven track record. Proven track record of lobbying, James muttered. He saw the fracture line Marcus had spoken of. It wasn't a crack, it was a gaping canyon. Marcus, I want you to start acquiring OmniLink. Use the shell corporations, all of them. Tier 3, 4 and 5. No single entity holds more than 0.5%. I want it silent. I want it untraceable. By the end of the week, I want controlling interest. That's a significant outlay, Marcus noted, but there was no question in his tone. The Vances left me $40 for my trouble, James said coldly. Consider this me making change. While Marcus executed the stealth acquisition of OmniLink, James focused his attention on Vance Consolidated itself. He wasn't just looking at their finances, he was dissecting their digital soul. He bypassed layers of corporate security with elegant, ghost-like ease. He flowed through their servers, reading their emails, their private memos, their internal reports. He found what he was looking for in the personal files of Harrison Vance's chief engineer. A suppressed internal audit on the Helios project's core technology. The report was damning. Vance Consolidated had cut corners. They had outsourced a critical encryption component to a foreign third party with a questionable security history to save on costs. The system had a backdoor. It wasn't just flawed, it was a national security risk. Harrison Vance had buried the report, betting everything that no one would ever find out. James saved a copy to a secure triple-encrypted server. This was the charge. Now he needed to set the timer. Meanwhile, in the gleaming towers of Vance Consolidated, Isabella Vance had all but forgotten the incident at the restaurant. She was busy planning a launch party for the Helios project, a lavish affair that would cement her family's legacy for another generation. She approved budgets for champagne fountains and celebrity appearances, her mind on photo ops and press releases. The memory of the man in the faded polo shirt was a non-entity, a piece of roadside trash she had scraped from her shoe. Her father, Harrison Vance, however, was less serene. He was a titan of industry, a man who had built his father's company into a global powerhouse. But he was also a man who lived on a knife's edge of paranoia. In the past few days, he'd felt a strange tremor in the market, a subtle, inexplicable pressure on his company's stock. Small, anonymous sell-offs, whispers in the financial chat rooms. It was nothing concrete, just a feeling. A predator's sense that something was circling in the dark. Is everything secure with the Helios announcement? He barked at his CFO during a board meeting. Yes, Harrison, ironclad. We have confirmation from Senator Rawlings' office. The press release is scheduled for Friday, 9:35 a.m., 5 minutes after the market opens. Good, Harrison grunted, though the unease didn't leave him. He felt like he was playing chess against an opponent he couldn't see. One who was moving pieces on a board he didn't even know existed. Back in his basement, James was orchestrating the symphony of destruction. He had Marcus's team at OmniLink discover a critical flaw in their own proposal and submit a revised, unsolicited addendum to the Pentagon's Procurement Committee. The addendum didn't just highlight their own strengths, it subtly pointed out the precise type of vulnerability that could exist in a system that cut corners on encryption. A mirror image of the flaw in Vance's design. Simultaneously, he used a cutout, a trusted investigative journalist he'd fed world-changing scoops to in the past, to send an anonymous, encrypted tip to the Department of Defense's Inspector General. The tip contained the first page of the suppressed Vance report. Just enough to light a fire. The pieces were moving. The Vances, blissfully unaware, were walking toward a cliff's edge, celebrating a victory that was about to be snatched from their grasp. On Thursday evening, the day before the planned announcement, James was upstairs, reading Lily a bedtime story. His phone, a simple burner phone he used for this phase of the operation, vibrated in his pocket. A single text message from Marcus. The board is set. James finished the story, kissed his daughter goodnight, and went back down to the labyrinth. His central screen showed a single countdown timer. It was ticking down the hours, minutes, and seconds to 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, the opening bell of the New York Stock Exchange. He had acquired controlling interest in the runner-up company. He had delivered the evidence of corporate malfeasance into the right hands. He had set up a network of automated trading algorithms primed to execute a series of devastating short sells the moment the news broke. He had built a guillotine. All that was left was to let it fall. He looked at the family photo on his desk. Him, Elena, and a baby Lily. Elena had always hated this side of him, the cold, calculating strategist. She had made him promise to leave it behind. "I'm sorry, my love," he whispered to the photo, "but they hurt our little girl. Some lessons have to be taught." He turned back to the screens, his face a mask of grim resolve. The Vances were about to get a masterclass in consequences. The morning air on Friday was thick with anticipation. In the Vance Consolidated boardroom on the 80th floor, it was the heady scent of victory. Crystal glasses were filled with champagne, waiting for the corks to be popped. Harrison Vance stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking down on the city like a king surveying his domain. His suit was impeccably tailored, his confidence absolute. The tremors of paranoia from earlier in the week had vanished, replaced by the warm glow of imminent triumph. Isabella was preening for the cameras of the financial news network that had been granted exclusive access to the moment of victory. She had her sound bites prepared, her smile perfected. She was the beautiful, brilliant heiress to a billion-dollar dynasty that was about to become a multi-billion-dollar empire. "5 minutes to the opening bell, Mr. Vance," his assistant said, her voice hushed with reverence. "Excellent," Harrison beamed. "At 9:35, the Pentagon will post the official contract award. Our stock will soar. It will be a glorious day." In his basement, hundreds of miles away, James watched them on a muted live feed he had accessed through the network's own broadcast servers. He saw their smiles, their smug confidence. He felt nothing. No satisfaction, no glee. Just a cold, quiet sense of purpose. He was a surgeon excising a cancer. Lily was at a friend's house for a playdate. The house was silent. The labyrinth was the center of the world. Marcus was on the line, his voice a calm anchor in the impending storm. "All systems are green, James. The algorithms are spooled." The Inspector General's office convened an emergency session at 600 hours this morning. Senator Rawlings was read in. "He's furious. He feels Vance used him." "He was used," James stated flatly. "The announcement is still scheduled for 9:35. Still on the Pentagon's public docket, yes, but it's a shell, a placeholder. The real announcement is the investigation." "Perfect," James said. The trap was not just about the contract, it was about the public humiliation. He wanted the fall to be as spectacular and as public as their arrogance. The countdown timer on his main screen hit 9:30 a.m. The opening bell of the NYSE rang, a distant chime marking the start of the business day. The stock symbol for Vance Consolidated, VNC, appeared on the screen. It opened strong, up 2% in pre-market trading on the expectation of the Helios news. In the Vance boardroom, a polite cheer went up. "To the future," someone toasted. James ignored it. His eyes were on the clock. 9:31, 9:32. The stock ticked up another 0.5%. The volume of trading was massive, full of optimistic buyers wanting to get in before the explosion. 9:33. James leaned forward. "Marcus, are you ready?" "Born ready." 9:34. James's fingers hovered over the keyboard. He had a manual override, but the system was designed to be automatic, triggered by the news feeds. He watched the second hand on the clock sweep around. 9:35 a.m. For a split second, nothing happened. The world held its breath. In the Vance boardroom, Harrison cleared his throat, ready to make his speech. Isabella smiled brightly for the camera. Then chaos erupted. On James's screen, a dozen news alerts flashed simultaneously. Pentagon launches urgent investigation into Vance Consolidated's Helios bid amid national security concerns. Vance Consolidated accused of fraud, suppressing flawed tech report. Sole preferred bidder status for Helios project immediately revoked. OmniLink Technologies now considered frontrunner for lucrative defense contract. James watched the VNC ticker, the green number turned red. And then it began to fall. It wasn't a dip, it was a cliff dive. "Execute," James said, his voice a whip crack in the silent room. Marcus gave the final command. A flood of automated short-sell orders, meticulously placed through dozens of anonymous brokerage accounts, controlled by James's shell corporations, hit the market. They were betting billions that the stock would crash. At the same time, the algorithms began selling off the small blocks of VNC stock they had quietly acquired over the past weeks, adding to the downward pressure. The stock plunged 10%, 20%. In the boardroom, the festive atmosphere evaporated. A frantic aide was whispering in Harrison Vance's ear, his face ashen. Harrison snatched the tablet from the aide's hand. His eyes widened in horror. "What is this? This is a lie, a smear campaign," he roared. Isabella's perfect smile froze, then crumbled. "Father, what's happening?" The VNC ticker on the news network's screen behind her was a waterfall of blood red. Down 35%, trading volume was astronomical. Panic was setting in. 9:36 a.m., James's system unleashed Phase 2. It sent a series of secure messages to the financial institutions that held Vance Consolidated's debt. The messages, appearing to be from a trusted financial analysis firm, one James secretly owned, highlighted the specific debt covenants tied to the Helios project. It informed them that the conditions for a default had likely just been met. The banks, fearing they would be left holding worthless paper, reacted instantly. They began issuing margin calls and calling in their loans. The credit lines that Vance Consolidated relied on to operate were being choked off, live on the air. Down 50%, 60%. The company was in freefall. A circuit breaker kicked in, halting trading on VNC for a few moments to prevent a total market panic. It was a temporary reprieve, a finger in a bursting dam. Harrison Vance was screaming into his phone, his face purple with rage and fear. "Get me the Secretary of Defense! Get me the President!" But his calls weren't being answered. His political capital had vanished in the blink of an eye. 9:38 a.m. Trading resumed. The sell-off was even more frantic. The company's market capitalization, which had been over $1 billion at the opening bell, was now evaporating. $800 million, $500 million, $250 million. James watched the numbers dispassionately. This was the shredder, not a machine of plastic and steel, but a surgical, systematic demolition of value, reputation, and legacy. He was shredding their future. 9:39 a.m. The final blow, newswires lit up with another story, this one planted by Marcus. OmniLink Technologies acquired by reclusive private equity group, Aegis Holdings. Aegis Holdings was James's primary shell. The market understood immediately. The company poised to win the Helios contract was now owned by a powerful, mysterious new player. Vance was out. OmniLink, backed by a financial titan, was in. The VNC stock collapsed, down 80%, 90%, 95%. In the boardroom, the camera crews were being shoved out, but not before capturing the image of Harrison Vance clutching his chest, his face a mask of disbelief, and Isabella staring blankly at the screen, her makeup streaked with tears as the ticker symbol for her family's legacy flatlined. 9:40 a.m. 5 minutes after the attack began, Vance Consolidated, a 100-year-old company, a pillar of American industry, was functionally worthless. Its stock was trading for pennies. Its credit was gone. Its reputation was shattered. Its billion-dollar fortune had been snatched, shredded, and turned into digital dust. In the quiet of his basement, James Allister leaned back in his chair. He closed the live feed of the boardroom. He closed the news alerts. He closed the stock tickers. The only thing left on his screen was the countdown clock, now reading 0. The surgeon's work was done. The cancer was removed. He stood up, turned off the monitors, and the labyrinth went dark and silent once more. It was time to go pick up his daughter. He had promised her ice cream. The fallout was biblical. The financial world spoke of the 5-minute collapse for years. A cautionary tale whispered in boardrooms and trading floors. They speculated about the shadowy Aegis Holdings and the mysterious force behind the attack, but Midas had left no fingerprints, only a crater where a mountain used to be. For Isabella Vance, the collapse was a death by 1,000 cuts, each one more personal than the last. The first was the public shame, her tear-streaked face on every financial blog, a meme for corporate hubris. When she finally stumbled out of the building that afternoon, a pack of reporters swarmed her, their questions like stones. Her driver was gone. The town car, a corporate asset, had been recalled. She tried to use her corporate credit card for a cab, only to have it declined with a brutal finality. The sneer on the cab driver's face was a mirror of her own, thrown back at her from a world she no longer controlled. Then came the silence. The phones stopped ringing, the invitations ceased. The friends who had once orbited her like planets around a sun vanished into the cold vacuum of her new poverty. 1 month after the fall, she stood in a sterile white auction house, a ghost in a borrowed dress, as a stranger with new money bought her mother's jewelry. The next, she watched movers, the same company she had once hired to move a grand piano into the penthouse, carry away her furniture. She and Julian moved into a cramped 2-bedroom townhouse with peeling paint and the perpetual smell of damp carpet. "Why can't we go home?" Julian asked one night, pushing a forkful of instant noodles around his plate. His voice was small, stripped of its former entitlement. "This is home now," Isabella snapped, her voice brittle. "But why?" he pressed, his eyes welling up. "Did we do something bad?" Isabella looked at her son, at the fear and confusion in his face, and for the first time she felt a crack in the armor of her rage. He was just a child who had kicked a chair, a child who was now paying for her sins. The thought was so agonizing she couldn't breathe. She spent weeks blaming a universe of faceless enemies. The idea that her own actions, a single fleeting moment of casual cruelty, could be the seed of this apocalyptic harvest was a truth too terrible for her pride to accept. But pride was a luxury she could no longer afford. After dozens of rejections, she finally landed an interview. A new philanthropic foundation was hiring an executive assistant. The address was a gleaming downtown tower she used to frequent for board meetings. The irony was a bitter pill. She put on her last good suit, a ghost of her former self, and took the subway, the press of anonymous bodies, a suffocating reminder of her fall from grace. The lobby was a cathedral of glass and light. The receptionist regarded her with polite indifference and directed her to the top floor. She walked down a long, silent corridor, each step an echo in the tomb of her past life, and was shown into a corner office with a view that could break your heart. A woman sat behind a large oak desk, her back to the door, silhouetted against the skyline. "You can have a seat, Ms. Vance," the woman said. The voice was calm, steady, and so horribly familiar it made the hairs on Isabella's arms stand up. The chair swiveled around. It was Clara, the waitress from Aurelia. Isabella's mind fractured. She saw the drab server's uniform superimposed over the tailored charcoal suit the woman now wore. She saw the tired eyes from the restaurant replaced by a gaze of such serene, unshakable confidence that it felt like a physical blow. A small, tasteful plaque on the desk read, "Clara Mendez, Executive Director." "You," Isabella whispered, the word catching in her throat like a shard of glass. "Me," Clara said. Her expression was not triumphant, not gloating. It was worse. It was serene. "Please sit down." Isabella remained frozen. "What is this? Some kind of sick joke? Did you win the lottery?" "Something like that," Clara replied, her voice smooth as polished stone. "It's an interview, Isabella, though in truth it's a formality. The position is yours, should you choose to accept it." She gestured to the chair again. "Your legs are shaking. You should sit." The command, delivered so gently, broke the last of Isabella's resistance. She sank into the plush leather, the chair sighing as it took her weight. "You work for Aegis Holdings," she stated, the name tasting like ash. "The ones who destroyed my family." "Destroyed?" "No," Clara corrected. "Aegis Holdings is more like a demolition and reclamation company. It removes unstable structures. My employer, he has a unique method for balancing the scales. He believes in potential. The night your son tripped his daughter, my employer saw everything. He saw a manager trying to keep the peace. He saw a waitress comforting a crying child whose birthday had just been ruined. He had his associate track us both down the next day. Philip, the manager you humiliated, he is now our head of hospitality investments, overseeing a portfolio of boutique hotels that value dignity above all else. Clara leaned forward, her eyes locking onto Isabella's. And he saw you. He heard you tell that little girl to learn her place. It seems you were right. Some are born to serve, and some to be served. You just misidentified your own position in the long run. The silence in the room was a physical weight, pressing the air from Isabella's lungs. What do you want from me? She finally rasped. I want to offer you a job, Clara said, sliding a thick folder across the desk. You would be the chief administrator for this organization, the Vance Legacy Foundation. Isabella stared, her mind refusing to process the words. The what? When Aegis Holdings acquired the liquidated assets of Vance Consolidated, the name was part of the package, Clara explained, her voice a soft, relentless scalpel. It now belongs to this charitable trust. Its sole mission is to provide educational and entrepreneurial grants to children and families from underprivileged backgrounds. The very people you once called drains on society. Isabella's face went bone white. The perfect poetic cruelty of it all crashed down on her. This wasn't just punishment, it was an education. You will process the applications, Clara continued, each word a precisely placed brick in the walls of Isabella's new reality. You will read their stories of hardship. You will arrange their interviews. You will manage the disbursements. You will spend your days ensuring that the wealth your family accumulated is used to give thousands of other children the chances you would have denied them. You will serve the memory of your family's name by building a legacy of charity, piece by painful piece. This is a prison, Isabella hissed, a final spark of defiance flaring. It's a cage. It's a job, Clara corrected gently. It comes with a modest salary, enough for you and your son to live on. But Isabella, it is not a choice. She tapped a tablet on her desk. An audio file began to play. It was Harrison Vance's voice, panicked and raw, speaking to his CFO on a recorded line James had breached weeks ago. Bury the report, bury it deep. If the Pentagon finds out about the encryption backdoor, we're finished. I don't care what it costs. Clara stopped the recording. Our legal department has a comprehensive file: fraud, endangering national security, insider trading. Enough to ensure your father dies in a federal prison. He is currently under house arrest, but that can change with a single phone call. If you accept this position, that file remains sealed. If you refuse... She left the threat hanging in the air, a guillotine suspended by a single invisible thread. Isabella felt the last of her fight dissolve into a hollow, aching void. She was trapped, utterly, perfectly, and completely. He hadn't just taken her money and her father. He had taken her very name and was now forcing her to launder it with a lifetime of good deeds. He was making her the architect of her own penance. Through the glass wall of the office, Isabella saw her son, Julian, sitting in the waiting area. He was staring at his scuffed shoes, looking small and lost. He was one of them now. One of the children whose future might one day depend on the Foundation's charity. Her charity. She looked down at her hands, at the phantom gleam of diamonds that were no longer there. The man in the faded polo shirt, the quiet woodworker. He had looked at her that night, and in his eyes she hadn't seen anger, but a terrifying sort of clarity. He had seen her for exactly what she was, weighed her on his own invisible scales, and found her wanting. This was the result. This was her place. With a trembling hand that felt impossibly heavy, she reached out and pulled the folder toward her. Miles away, James Alistair pushed a swing in a sun-drenched park. On it, his daughter Lily laughed, her head thrown back, her hair flying in the wind. She was wearing a brand-new, perfectly intact plastic tiara. His burner phone vibrated in his pocket. He glanced at the screen. It was Marcus. "Go on, sweetie, one more big push," he said, giving the swing a gentle arc before stepping back and answering. "It's done," Marcus's voice said, calm and professional. "The Vance Legacy Foundation is officially operational. Isabella Vance signed her employment contract 20 minutes ago. She starts Monday." "Good," James said, his eyes never leaving his daughter. "Phase 1 is complete," Marcus continued. "Are we proceeding with Phase 2? "Absolutely," James replied without hesitation. "The board of OmniLink has been persuaded. We're announcing the Helios grant program tomorrow." full college scholarships and vocational training for the children of every single Vance Consolidated employee who was laid off during the collapse. The first checks will be mailed next week. James watched as Lily pumped her legs, trying to go higher. His vengeance was never just about tearing down, it was about building something better from the rubble. He wasn't just punishing an enemy, he was salting the earth of their legacy and planting a forest for others. He was correcting a flaw in the system, rebalancing a scale that had been tipped too far by arrogance and cruelty. "She learned her place, Marcus," James said softly, a universe of meaning in the simple words. "Indeed," Marcus replied, "the world is a little more balanced today." "Welcome back, Midas." "Don't call me that," James said, his voice instantly losing its hard edge. "Midas is retired. I'm just a woodworker." He ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket. The ghost of Midas receded and the father returned. Eleanor would not have approved of his methods, he knew. She would have seen the cold, brutal strategist she had urged him to leave behind, but she would have understood the motive. He hadn't done it for the thrill of the game or for the power. He had done it to protect the small, perfect world he had built. A world where a little girl's birthday was more important than a $30,000 handbag. "Higher, Daddy, higher," Lily squealed with delight. "To the moon." James smiled, a real warm smile that reached his eyes. He walked back to the swing. His world wasn't in a skyscraper or a command center. It was right here, in the sound of his daughter's laughter, under a bright blue sky. He gave the swing a mighty push, sending her soaring. He was just a father in a park, enjoying a simple afternoon with his daughter. He was exactly where he belonged.